we go.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our Horticulture Town Hall. We've got some really interesting topics to share with you today, so hopefully you'll learn something new. Before we get into our list of topics today, I want to mention a couple of upcoming programs that you might be interested in, and I will put links to all of these in the chat box so that you can click on those for more information. The first that I wanted to mention is a produce safety class for community gardens. So if you're involved with a community garden and want to learn more about handling your garden produce safely, this is a free class on August the 25th. And again, I'll put the link in the chat. There's also a couple of classes left in the Soils 101 class series, and I will put the link to those in the chat box as well. We also have an upcoming class series on fall gardening. And Donna, would you like to say a little bit about these classes?
Yes, we have 3 classes planned for this fall. One is on September 9th. It's going to be on soils. September 16th will be on lasagna gardening. And September 23rd will be on season extension techniques. So things like row covers, hotbeds, cold frames. But all these will start at 6:30 in the evening. For all 3, it will cost $30, and it is by Zoom. So it's all virtual. So it's going to be a pretty good opportunity to get in some extra continuing education for master gardeners, or if you're just a gardener. These are great to definitely expand your horizons on how to improve your garden.
All right, thank you. And yeah, I think many of us are really getting interested in fall gardening. The heat's not so bad, the insect pressure is not so bad. So it's just a really pleasant time of the year to garden. So hopefully several of you can partake in those classes and get some great information. With that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to our moderator today, Jennifer Shooter, and she will get into our topics that we're going to discuss today. Jennifer?
All right, thank you, Kelly. And we will start, like most weeks, with our weather update from Pat Guinan, our weatherman.
Thank you, Jennifer, and good afternoon, everyone. I'll go right into it with some really nice weather the past few days. And this map that we see here is our radar estimate of rainfall that fell over the past week. And any of those areas in various shades of greens and yellows is where the heaviest precipitation occurred over this past weekend. Northern Missouri, east central sections, a little bit more scattered, but some southern areas that actually needed some rainfall, they got it in some of the drier locations. But generally anywhere from a half to 1 inch to 1.5 inches in those darker greens and more than 2 inches. There actually was a report in Marion County, just north of Palmyra, of 4 inches. And that's why you see that little red dot right there. A little bit drier conditions. They've been missing out in parts of west central Missouri, but overall, we're looking pretty good in the rainfall category, considering it is the first week of August. Looking at the climatology for the month of July, again, somewhat of a benign month. We can have really hot days in Missouri, but we had no triple-digit heat. And on the left here, this is precipitation. Any of those colors in blue of 5 or more inches, some very heavy totals across parts of north central, northeast Missouri. The greens are the lighter colors, a little bit drier here around the St. Joe area in northwest Missouri. Some scattered areas of dryness also across southern sections. Here in the lower left are some of the actual rain gauge reports. Look at some of these totals in northeast Missouri. Marion County, over 1 foot of rain. Lewis and Sullivan County, over 11 inches. Down in southeast Missouri, right around St. Genevieve, St. Francis County, they had over 10 inches. And again, those drier conditions in northwest Missouri showing up here in the rain gauge reports, generally only about 1.5 inches, which is below normal for the month of July. On the right, these are temperature departure from normals. Again, a benign month in regard to temperatures for typically our hottest time of year, the month of July. Those greens are indicative of below normal temperatures, generally running about anywhere from about a half to 1 degree below normal. The gray colors are more seasonable, perhaps ever so slightly above normal. These are actual locations. I selected 9 locations across northern, central, and southern Missouri just to show you those temperature departures. Fairly seasonable, and again, not running anywhere from about plus or minus 1 degree above or below normal. We are, I hope you have a chance to get out today and enjoy it. It's these temperatures we've been seeing the past few days are more typical of the middle of June, let alone the first week of August. It's just absolutely beautiful, with highs generally in the upper 70s to lower 80s over the past few days. Those days are winding down. We're actually heading more into a more dog days of summer, more classic, higher temperatures in the upper 80s, lower 90s, and increasing humidities, which will make it more uncomfortable. Again, today will be the pick day of the week, and as we go into tomorrow into the weekend with hotter and more humid conditions, there are some slight chances of isolated showers and thunderstorms starting tonight across Northwest Missouri, and then expanding perhaps into Friday and the first part of the weekend, especially in the northern half of the state. That looks like not a widespread chance of showers and thunderstorms, but nonetheless, it does look like with the increasing heat and humidity, there will be some scattered showers and thunderstorm possibilities. I think most of this time period, it will be dry. Lows, again, will be warming generally as we get into nice tomorrow morning in the mid to upper 50s, lower 60s, but warming into the 60s and 70s as we go into the weekend. And as I mentioned, the hot temperatures return by the weekend. I do want to reflect here on the right. These are condition monitoring reports that are a part of the COCORAS network. I talked about a little bit about COCORAS last year. It's the Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network. We all have the opportunity to participate and provide rainfall information through rain gauge reports. We have about 350 regular observers here in Missouri that report in the COCORAS network. It's a national network. Another nice product of COCORAS is that you can submit what are called condition monitoring reports. And in this red box are a couple reports that just came out within the past couple of days. It really provides a nice pulse of the type of environmental conditions we're experiencing here in Missouri. And the chart here below actually is the locations of condition reports that have been submitted over the past week. But I thought it was interesting to note here in Platte County, just north of Kansas City, they're indicating some, this is the report that came from the Observer, showing some very nice conditions and what they're anticipating in regard to the peaches and tomatoes that are starting to come out. But it really provides a good pulse of what's happening in our state in regard, and a lot of horticulture specialists participate in COCORAS and provide this nice informative information. What we like about it, because it provides assessments, it provides impacts when it comes to extreme conditions like droughts and floods, but looking pretty good according to most of the reports that are showing near normal conditions. A little bit more dryness here in Berry County where they're indicating some drier conditions. But if you're interested in participating and becoming a COCORAS observer, I put the website here at the bottom, and you can get more information by shooting me an email as well. And I'd be happy to visit with you about if you're interested in being a COCORAS observer. Rainfall over the next few days does look like, I mentioned, scattered showers and thunderstorms starting tonight across Northwest Missouri and perhaps impacting the northern half of the state as we go into the weekend. Again, not a lot is expected, but anytime you're under one of those localized thunderstorms, it can drop significant rainfall. So this is a very generalized map of what to expect. The best likelihood for heavier precip does appear currently over the next few days to be across Iowa and the upper Midwest. This is the forecast for next week. Temperatures on the left. These deeper shades of red indicate an enhanced likelihood of above normal temperatures. Again, this time of year, typically highs are in the upper 80s, lows in the upper 60s. When I look like I'm at a map like this, it does look like those 90s that will be returning by the weekend will persist through much of next week with above normal temperatures as well as humid conditions. And then on the right, there is an enhanced likelihood of perhaps some above normal precipitation especially across the northern half of the state where we see this greener shade, and drier conditions are anticipated across southern parts of Missouri. Jennifer, that's pretty much a weather report. Thank you so much. I'll hand it back over to you.
All right, thank you, Pat. And I have to say, I have really enjoyed the last few days here in Northeast Missouri. It's been in the 70s and we haven't had rain in 4 days now. So some of us are just really enjoying this nice weather. So thank you for your report. Now, getting into the questions. Our first question is about white pine trees and when they should be trimmed. So when is the soonest that someone can trim a white pine tree? And Pong is going to tell us about that. And I will also mention that after he finishes up this question, he's going to go into oak wilt.
Thank you, Jennifer. Like Jennifer mentioned, this question actually is really important for the homeowner to prune their pine tree occasionally to keep them healthy and stay beautiful. So let's talk about trimming. So first, the question would be why should we trim, or why trimming? First, by trimming the tree, it will help you to remove all the damaged or dead or diseased parts of the pine tree so that the pine can grow healthier, and it can also grow denser for the foliage or for the canopy. The second reason for trimming is it can help you to better maintain the overall shape of the tree and also enhance the safety of your property. You don't want a big branch that was overloaded by the branches, and someday it will fall or snap off from the main tree. So regarding the time of trimming, that's more related to the question. It is always the best to trim your tree in the late winter to early spring when the tree is still kind of like in a dormant condition. That would also help the plant to avoid invasion of any plant pests, because that's also the period time of those plant pests being in the dormant state. However, if your tree is confirmed with certain diseases or damage, or there's a risk of falling branches, you need to start trimming as soon as possible. If you can, avoid trimming in the late summer or like early fall, because that's the favorable time of all type of the plant disease transmission. So I will actually talk about that in detail while speaking about the oak wilt. In addition to the time of the year, here are some tips of the trimming. For the age of the tree, it's better to prune the pine tree when it is still young, which will allow you to reduce a lot of efforts in maintenance in the future. So it will be better shape the tree canopy and save you a lot of energy and time and effort in the future. For other tips of trimming, since I'm a plant pathologist, I will be very careful for pruning the tree. One reason that it can cause wounds, which can also open doors for the pathogens. Not to mention it will also stress the tree. Therefore, trim it like I marked, only trim when it is necessary. I would recommend you to sanitize the pruning tools while trimming different trees so that you are not transmitting the disease from one tree to another. And some people like to use some wood dressings to coat the wounds, but the recent research showed that it's not that beneficial, and it cannot prevent any disease or insect. And but for something you can do for post-pruning care is try to focus on the good irrigation and fertilization and good mulching and good weed control so that that can keep the tree healthy. That's all I have for the trimming. Let's switch a gear and talk about the next topic, the oak wilt. So for oak wilt, our lab recently received several phone calls and samples for confirming of the oak wilt. I think it's very important to give you a brief talk about this disease, since this is the time that oak wilt showed up the symptoms. In this talk, I will first give you a brief introduction about this disease, and then go through the symptom and sign to kind of like guide you through how can we identify this disease. After that, I will go to disease management and how to perform the diagnosis for this disease. What is an oak wilt? The oak wilt is a fungal disease caused by a fungal pathogen that can infect the vascular system of oak. Like you know, there are two families of oak: white oak and within and red oaks. Actually, the oak wilt can cause different effect for those two types of oaks. It can weaken the white oaks, but it can kill the red oak trees within weeks of infection. Like I mentioned before, for the oak wilt transmission, it normally can be transmitted by the sap-feeding beetles that carries the oak wilt spores to the fresh wounds during the early part of the growing season. And this disease can also be transmitted by the root grafting connecting nearby oaks. Like I mentioned during the talk about trimming the tree, you can tell these beetles, they can transmit spore to the fresh wounds that are caused by pruning. Therefore, pruning is very important to have at least a prevention of the disease. The critical time of this disease is middle March through June. So please, if you want to trim the tree, do not trim your tree during this period of time because that's a time that this tree has been actively transmitted by insects. Once the plant was infected by the oak wilt, the symptoms are going to show up from July to November, which is basically now. Now that's all the brief information, the general information of this disease. Let's take a look how the oak wilt symptoms or signs look like. Before going to the symptom signs, let's first differentiate to what oak tree you have. There are two major oak family. One is red oak, the other is white oak. They can be differentiated by the morphological traits of the leaf. Normally, the red oak tree leaves have really pointing lobes, while all the white oak trees has more rounded and smooth lobes. Based on the not only by the morphology, the oak wilts definitely have different taste on the two different oaks. So you can tell the oak wilt is deadly for red oak family. So if you have red oak, pink oak, black oak, scarlet oak, they are very susceptible to oak wilt. While for white oak families, they normally cause tree decline and can slowly kill the tree within years. So this family, you can tell they're white oak, swamp white oak, and bird oak. And they all cause similar symptoms. So these two photos I collected. One is from Michigan Department of Natural Resources. The other is from my lab. You can tell the symptoms start like the browning and the wilting of the top of the leaf, and then they developed and from the margin and they progress toward the leaf base. And normally this leaf wilting or leaf lesion can cause very early leaf dropping, which we call premature leaf defoliation. And that happened really fast, and it can occur within 2 to 6 weeks of initial infection. And if you have this type of lesions and it's confirmed with oak wilt, it will kill the tree within a year. So the early dropping or the premature leaf dropping is very characteristic for oak wilt. In contrast, it can be very easily to be confused with another common disease for oak called a bacterial leaf scorch. Some people call it bacterial leaf wilt. It is caused by a bacteria called Lilac. This disease can cause also marginal burning, but so they more follow the interveinal area and then they go into the center and cause a whole leaf turning to brown. Once the whole leaf turns to brown, somehow those leaves can hang on to the branch for extended period of time and without dropping, and eventually they will die, they will fall onto the ground. So the one thing, the kind of like a take-home message for today to differentiate those two types of disease is oak wilt can cause premature leaf dropping, while bacterial leaf scorch will not cause leaf dropping in such dramatic way or in such short of a time. So another symptom or signs of oak wilt is focusing on the stem. So this disease can cause the brown or black streaking on the stem underneath the bark. If you have really favorable condition, the disease can continue to develop into fungal mats, was shown here under the bark. This was actually found on a dead oak tree infected by oak wilt. You can tell how manifested this fungal disease developed. Therefore, once the tree had been confirmed with oak wilt, it's better to cut the tree as soon as possible so that they will not become like this. It's just a bunch of fungal spore to be ready to transmit it to other tree. They will serve as the inoculum source for the neighborhood. In the end, I would like to talk about disease management and diagnosis. Unfortunately, oak wilt there's no cure for oak wilt. If your tree get an oak wilt, it will die. Therefore, it's better to carefully pruning of the infected branches and have a really good tree care. Most of the disease management will be focused on the preventive method. Try to avoid pruning or damage the oak from March to June. There's some fungicide available, can do the fungicide injection that can only slow down the development. Another strategy will be focused on the killing the grafted trees with mechanic trenching or chemical application. Like I mentioned, remove the dead tree as soon as possible. If you are not sure, contact the local Missouri Department of Conservation Foresters for more information or treatment. Again, our lab, MU Plant Diagnostic Clinic, we're here to help. If you have any concern for your oak tree, don't hesitate to make a phone call or send an email, send a photo of your tree to our lab. And if you decided to send a sample to us, here is a brief description of the guidelines, how to submit a sample. Select 4 to 6 stems that are about 8 to 10 inches long with about 0.5 to 1.5 inches diameter. Please send me the living tissue, not a completely dead tissue, and make sure it shows the vascular discoloration or dieback on the stem. Sometimes it may be really hard to collect, and we will do our best to identify this disease once we receive the sample. Let us know if you have any question. That's all for today. Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Pong. That was really good and informative information. Now we're going to switch gears and go from tree diseases to vegetables. And we're going to talk about, actually we have a video, and the video is going to describe best practices for harvesting vegetables.
The 4 States is known for its abundant produce. Whether you grow your own fruits and vegetables or buy from a local producer, here are a few tips to keep eating healthy and safe. Wash your hands, utensils, and storage containers with hot soapy water for at least 20 seconds. Rinse produce immediately before use. Use a vegetable brush to scrub peels or rinds. Do not use bleach, detergent, or soap. Discard bruised or damaged produce. Bacteria can thrive inside. Always refrigerate unused produce to ensure freshness and enjoy.
Okay, we thank Robert Balick for sharing or putting together that video and letting us play that today. So thanks, Robert. And I will mention, I do get questions about produce and, produce from a community garden or produce from a food pantry garden or a home garden. And people want to know, should they wash their produce before eating it? And the answer is yes. So you should always wash your produce. I wash garden grow produce here at the extension office, my home produce. I put a little drop of dish detergent on it and wash it real well and then rinse it before I put a knife through like a melon or a cantaloupe or something. So it's really important to follow those food safety practices when, before you eat fresh fruits and vegetables. And now we're going to go on to another topic, critters. And a lot of people have issues with groundhogs and deer and rabbits and bulls and just various critters in their gardens. And Bob Pierce is going to talk about management for these critters.
Well, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon now. And yes, Jennifer, wildlife can certainly be an interest to many people. A lot of folks enjoy having wildlife on their property and managing for wildlife around their home or on their farm. And wildlife are certainly very valuable to the ecological world and to enjoy observing as well as hunting and fishing. However, we know that wildlife conflicts can obviously occur, and particularly when they start causing economic damage, then it's time to take action and solve the problem. And so today I want to just go over some basic concepts with you. I won't have time to go into a lot of detail on controlling specific species, but certainly want to give you all the resources that we have here with MU Extension and also through the Missouri Department of Conservation to help you be successful. We know that a variety of wildlife can certainly get in our pocketbook, if you will, and cause problems, whether it be raccoons and squirrels or skunks, rabbits, white-tailed deer, groundhogs was mentioned, of course, mice and voles, other rodents. Many of these can just be a nuisance, or they may actually cause some problems, denting in buildings, feeding in garbage, damaging sod, eating stems and crop and ornamental damage, damage to structures, all can occur. And just examples of this can be browsing damage from deer, raccoons eating sweet corn, birds defecating on your backyard furniture. All are just examples of how wildlife can be in conflict. And of course, there's many others we can all identify with. Moles, for instance, don't cause a lot of economic damage, but they can certainly be a nuisance in your lawn. So again, some examples of wildlife depredation. Here's a nice example of robins pecking at fruit. And these are certainly issues that can cause economic losses that we need to take care of. I wanted to let you know of two excellent resources that we've just created with our MU Extension Nuisance Wildlife Program. We have a new web page that you can go to that access all the guide sheets that we have. It's there at the top, Nuisance Wildlife, and a lot of information there on that extension web page. The one extension guide that probably does the best job of giving an overview of some of the different techniques that you can use to solve your problem is MU Extension Guide G9425, Solving Wildlife Damage Problems in Missouri. A lot of resources in this guide that I'll share with you, as well as in this real quick presentation. Basically, there's 4 components for any type of wildlife damage program, whether it be squirrels or raccoons or what have you. Number 1, take time to assess the damage and correctly identify the critter that's causing the problem. You certainly don't want to spend a lot of money on controlling a particular problem and misidentify the species you're working with. Then understand their behavior and their ecology. When do they have litters of young? What time of year are they most active? Things like that. And then take time to select the appropriate control technique and always evaluate your efforts. Keeping in mind that there's no silver bullet. There's a lot of different tools at your disposal. A lot of integrated types of management can be used. And another important question, think about how much damage you're willing to tolerate before implementing a control program. You may be able to tolerate some damage that you can live with. However, keeping in mind that anytime you invest in a damage control program, that takes time and money, and it may not be worth your effort. Maybe you can live with those conflicts and still have a nice corn crop, for instance. Also, it's important to know the legality of all the different methods at your disposal. We have labeled pesticides that we can use, but it's certainly important to follow those labeled directions. It's also important to follow all the state and federal regulations related to the Missouri Wildlife Code, because we have game species that could cause problems, and those are certainly regulated through our hunting seasons. But it's important to contact a Missouri Department of Conservation agent if you're needing to solve some problems that deal with game species. Also, keep in mind there's city regulations to adhere to. So you probably aren't going to go out and shoot and make a lot of noise within a city that's illegal. And then if you're trying to control birds, many of our species are covered under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, and even woodpeckers causing damage to your cedar siding. You can't just go out and shoot those birds or trap them or deal with them unless you get a permit through the USDA Wildlife Services. Keeping in mind these different methods do have a lot of laws and regulations around them. Well, there's a number of management options we can think about to control and prevent damage from wildlife. The first one is really to manipulate their habitat. You know, all wildlife need food, cover, and water and space. If you can change the dynamic of any of these by removing food, taking advantage of removing cover, their habitat, that goes a long way in solving a problem. Maybe you can eliminate the food resources, maybe build an animal out by fencing, excluding wildlife from an area. All go a long ways of preventing a problem from occurring. And here are some examples of using netting, fencing, and other types of measures to deter certain species, in this case, birds from a vineyard. Fences are certainly an excellent way to eliminate damage from occurring, and in particular with white-tailed deer. Some of the fencing, such as the exclusion fence, the 8 to 10 foot wire mesh, is a more permanent design and fairly expensive, except if you're dealing with high value crops where you need to invest that type of money. These types of fences can certainly be very effective in preventing deer from entering an area and causing problems. There's a number of other types of fences that can be used that are more portable in nature. Electric fences, such as the 1 or 2 strand mylar or tape fence, or also the 17 gauge electric fence that you see around many of our livestock operations, are very effective for wildlife. More often, these are psychological barriers where a deer might go up to the fence, particularly if it's baited with peanut butter or scented, and learn to avoid the area by getting a shock. They don't necessarily keep the deer out totally, but they learn to avoid the area by virtue of just the shock they receive. There's a number of different designs that can be used. We have a deer damage guide that you can find in the web page I shared with you that goes into much more detail on different fencing designs that can be used. And here's a couple examples of using some of the different 2 or 3 strand fence designs. In this case, baited with peanut butter on aluminum foil tags. And again, having the deer touch that with their nose and getting a shock and learning to avoid the area. Again, some different examples of how electric fences can be used around gardens to protect from deer. And here's a couple examples as well. Again, I mentioned the peanut butter fence, very effective. It's usually a single strand, 17 gauge wire, about 30 inches in height. And it can be temporary, it can be portable, you can move it, and the deer learn to alter their behavior, and psychologically very effective. Trapping, probably one of our best tools for a number of species. Here you see a few examples of some of the mole traps. Trapping is very effective for beaver. Also, we have a number of traps that are live traps that can be used as well. So for raccoons or woodchucks, skunks, what have you. And of course, traps are very effective for house mice, as we all know. Repellents, a lot of interest in using repellents, keeping in mind that they do not eliminate the damage. They may reduce it some. They must be reapplied regularly, whether you're using an odor-based repellent or a taste-based repellent. And really, they've shown a lot of mixed results, and they're fairly expensive to purchase. And again, they're out there, they're labeled for use. You can go to most of your home garden stores and find these products. Both the taste and area repellents or odor repellents can work. Here are some examples that you commonly see. Different products, again, out there. Also, there's non-commercial types that have been tried and used for various situations, including human hair, soap bars, even using rotten eggs combined with water around us using a sprayer. All have been tried and used, and you know, if it works, that's great. Keep using it. But again, one of those tools that we have, probably shouldn't rely on repellents to a great extent. They're expensive. They have to be reapplied after a rainfall, for instance. And so just use those as you need. Of course, there's a number of labeled toxicants that are out there for different species. Some of these are restricted use pesticides, so keep that in mind. And others are non-restricted use. Most of us have used toxicants for maybe controlling house mice around our home, pretty commonly used. But toxicants can also be used for voles and other animals where they're labeled. And be sure to follow that label very carefully because they're very specific in their use. Also, we have all kinds of tools that can be used to harass an animal, whether it be windmills or scary balloons or mylar tape, aluminum tape foil, flags blowing in the air. Sound tactics can be used. A lot of visual controls, such as these effigies of an owl, balloons, reflective tape, all are in our toolbox. And mostly these are used for birds in many cases, but can also be used for other species as well. Again, here are some positives and negatives about using visual controls. But again, a tool that's at our disposal in our wildlife damage toolbox. Of course, don't forget about hunting. Very effective, particularly for white-tailed deer. Use the legal hunting seasons if you have opportunities to do so, and take advantage of having venison in your freezer, and an excellent way to enjoy the outdoors and also have an impact on depredating deer you might have. So again, no panaceas at all. Don't believe the silver bullets and all the advertisements for some of these things. Make sure you have research-based information, which our extension guides provide. Think about a variety of solutions and select the one that's most cost-effective. Again, that's the bottom line. Cost-efficient, effective measures, and those that are humane as well. So again, that's really what I wanted to cover today. Very quickly, we have a number of resources that we have. The Missouri Department of Conservation has wildlife damage biologists in the various regions of the state that can provide technical assistance. And here's some of the resources that you can have access to. And hopefully you'll have a success in keeping any problem wildlife at bay. Jennifer, that's all I have.
All right, very good, Bob. Thank you so much for presenting that. Now it is time for friend or foe, and I will turn it over to Tamara to do that today.
Thank you. I will share my screen. All right, here we go. All right, this is the chance for all of you guys to let us know whether you think this is a friend or foe. There should be a poll. Let's see if we can launch the poll. Okay, there we go. So if you have it on your screen, you can go ahead and tell us whether this is a friend or foe. If you want to put it in the chat, you can do that as well. I'll give you guys about 10 seconds. Okay. Well, here we go. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. And then I'm going to share the results. All right, there you go. So this one was a little bit of a challenge, apparently. We have, it looks like most everybody said that it's a friend, with almost tied closely with foe. We have a few people in there who said neither, and it depends. Okay, well, I'm going to tell you what I said. Here we go, hold on. I consider this definitely a friend because this is a mud dauber. And mud daubers are solitary wasps. They usually are about 1/2 inch to 1.25 inches in length. They have a very slender thread-like waist, and they build mud nests in sheltered areas. So it is a wasp, but this is actually a very good wasp to have. They prey on insects and spiders. This wasp will capture these arthropods. She'll sting them with she'll sting them, and then that paralyzes them. She'll take them to a nest where she'll lay an egg on them, and then she builds a partition to make a small cell, and then does it all over again until the tube is full of individual cells containing the prey and the eggs. So mud daubers, they're not aggressive at all. They don't defend their nests, and usually if they're going to sting, it's because they've been pinned against your skin. They are considered beneficial, except for maybe the mud nests that can be around human structures. So if you don't want the mud nests there, you can just knock them down and wash them off. You just need water and a brush. There's no insecticide treatment that's necessary. So a friend to have in your garden. And then actually I have the next question. So I am going to go ahead and bring that one up. Wait just a second. I have so many screens open. Hold on a second. Hold on. Here we go. Okay, so coming from the mud dauber, which is a friend, this one, if I had it up, this would actually be an it depends. Most people would put yellow jackets into the pest category, and I can understand why they would do that. So we're going to talk a little bit more about yellow jackets and how to identify them, and then also control strategies. So first of all, I do want to mention that we do have a guide sheet on this. It's in the Bees and Wasps guide sheet. We do have a section specifically for yellow jackets. Okay, so to identify yellow jackets, first of all, they are a yellow and black striped body. Now, this is very similar to many other insects that we have. And I'm also going to point out that antennae are black. There are some that look very similar that have a yellow or an orange antennae, and those are a European paper wasp, but the yellow jacket has black antennae. These are about 1/2 inch long. They are social, so they actually have very large colonies. Again, they have that black antennae. There are 3 species found in Missouri. We have the eastern, southern, and German yellow jackets. The German yellow jacket is primarily found in the St. Louis area. So they also have 2 different places where they will build nests. The eastern and southern typically will have below ground nests, whereas the German can have an above ground nest. So yellow jackets really only become a problem when they are defending their nests, and they can defend their nests very aggressively. You don't want to be stung, especially if you're allergic to them. Typically, it's late summer and fall, so about this time when they become most aggressive, and that's partly because there's less food available, and also they're not nurturing their young anymore. So there's just an awful lot of adults and there's less food. And so they can become much more aggressive at this time of year. Also, if you are having a picnic outside and you have your barbecue and your sodas and things like that, they are attracted to that. So if you are out there and having a picnic, you will definitely want to be watching for these guys. So IPM strategies. First of all, make sure it's a yellow jacket. We have a lot of native pollinators that look very similar. The honeybee and native bees, so our bumblebees, they look similar. So just because it's yellow and black does not mean it's a yellow jacket and does not mean that you need to be scared. So what you can do is actually improve your sanitation practices. So these are scavenging insects. So you'll want to keep food covered or bring them indoors. And this does include pet food. And of course, your soda cans, make sure that they're covered. Garbage should be in sealed containers and should be emptied regularly. If you have a garden with ripe fruit, make sure to harvest it. And if you don't harvest all of it, make sure you dispose any that you don't intend to bring inside. Traps can be useful, not all the time, but they can be. You might have seen those yellow lure traps in the stores. If you hang them around the perimeter of your yard, sometimes that can help, but they actually have limited success. If you're having a big event and you do want to host it or hold a trap, you might want to try this one. It's a dead fish or some kind of meat that's suspended above a water-filled tub with dish soap, and put that away from where you're gathering so that the wasp will go over there and not where you are. Also, if you do need to treat a nest, really this is only necessary if the nest is near a human structure and perhaps specifically the entryways such as doors or windows. If treatment is necessary, make sure that you know where the nest is and you only treat the nest. So spraying single wasp or spraying the air, it's not effective and it can be dangerous. You also might want to consider hiring a pest control professional because these insects do sting and like I said, it could be dangerous. If you do treat the nest yourself, you should wear protective clothing. You want to determine where the nest is during the day, and then you're going to treat the nest at night, and you're going to either use a red light or put cellophane over a regular flashlight so that you're disguising the light as red, so that the wasp will be less able to sense your approach. If it's an in-ground nest, you'll use an insecticidal dust. That's going to be the most effective. Follow the label instructions. Remember, this is the law, to follow those instructions. And just as a general idea, most insecticides are pyrethroids. If you go to the sources that I'm going to drop in the chat, you'll be able to get more information. If the nest is in your house or it's high up, as in a tree or on an eave of your house, again, you might want to consider hiring a professional to avoid creating a worse situation or getting injured. So the best treatment might actually be to leave them alone if they're not bothering anyone. And as it gets colder, just keep in mind that the nest will die off. It's only the queens that overwinter. So hopefully that helps if you do have a yellow jacket issue. Again, they are really only a pest if they're near your house or a place where you could get stung or in your yard. Otherwise, it's probably best to just leave them alone.
Thank you, Tamara. Our next topic is spider mites, and for some, spider mites might be becoming a problem on certain plants. And Kelly has an interesting plant covered in spider mites that she is going to show you and talk about now.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. So yes, I wanted to show this photo that came in from one of our community gardens here in Springfield. And as you can see here, there's webbing all over this marigold plant. And the person that sent me this photo said that he hadn't noticed it. And then all of a sudden he was out there and the whole plant was covered. This is a spider mite, a two-spotted spider mite, and they're pretty common in the hot part of the summer. They do like marigolds. And sometimes you don't notice them. And this has been the case for me with some plants that I've had this summer. They had a pretty bad spider mite infestation. And I was out around the plants every day and didn't even notice that the population had built up. And then upon closer inspection, I had noticed some leaf stippling and some yellowing, which was their feeding. And then if nothing is done, their population can really get out of control, and then you can get in a situation like we see here. Now, if you do find yourself with plants that are covered in this type of webbing, you can clean up the plants, but for the most part, they're probably not going to recover with the amount of summer that we have left. So in this case, it's probably best to just go ahead and pull and dispose of these plants so that those mites won't start spreading over to other plants as well. Now, if you do have a plant that has spider mites on it, you can do a couple of things as far as management practices go. You can go out there and you can just use a spray nozzle on your garden hose and really just kind of spray that plant with a really steady stream of water. That can knock many of the spider mites from the plant and kill them. You can use insecticidal soap, and you can even use a miticide. Now, miticides are a little bit pricey, but there are some on the market that you can use. But if it's just a minor infestation, insecticidal soap and sprays of water work just fine. But just keep a close eye on your plants. Again, spider mites like really, hot, dry weather like we've been having lately, and their population can get out of control very quickly. So Jennifer, that's what I had to share today.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. And I would bet that a lot of gardeners have not seen a spider mite infestation that bad. So I'm glad you shared that with us to make us all aware of what we might see out there.
Yeah, and Jennifer, I will mention that picture that I shared, it is likely that was taken in the morning while there was dew on the webbing. So it made it really pop and stand out and noticeable. So maybe a scouting session in your garden in the mornings would be helpful.
Okay, thanks for the advice. All right, moving on to our next topic, that is lilac issues. And I know here in Adair County, we've had some gardeners with some lilac problems. And last week I had a question with some photos come in from Boone County. So I know it's not just way up here by, the Iowa border, it's possibly all over the state. And Pong is going to talk about some of the issues you might see going on with your lilacs at this time.
Jennifer, before moving to my talk, there's a question in the chat box. Should I proceed with the question or my talk?
Go ahead and answer the question.
Okay, I think she also posted on to the public. So squirrels ate all my apples and are now onto the tomato in my garden. What is your recommendation from all the choices? That's a question, I guess, responding to Bob's presentation.
Is Bob still on? Bob has left. Well, does anybody have an answer to that question? I can't say I have a good answer. Anyone?
Squirrels are pretty tough to deal with when they find something that they like. There's almost no stopping them. They are clever and they are very persistent. You can try putting some sort of netting over them or some sort of screen that's a metal screen so they can't get through it. But it is tough. People have tried to interact with squirrels and they're cute depending on who you're talking to. But they're persistent and they are clever. So trying to figure out some sort of screen is probably one of the best way.
Thank you, Tamara. So Pong, we'll turn it over to you now to talk about lilac diseases.
I will be quick. So I remember early in this town hall meeting, Jennifer mentioned that she really enjoyed the weather. I would say the fungal pathogen also really enjoy those cool and wet weather. And that's why the lilac got a lot of problem recently. I received this photo is from a client. He has 12 lilac plants, all look like this. You can tell they lost about at least 80% of canopy. All the leaves are gone and all the leaves, existing leaves, they're curling, they're browning. So what's the problem with this lilac? Today I'm going to talk about 3 major diseases of lilac. There are 2 fungal pathogens and 1 bacterial diseases. So first is anthracnose. It is very common disease for all the woody ornamental and normally cause small irregular shapes of the lesions, and then they will expand to the margin and the whole leaf will turn to be curling and wrinkling. And sometimes they will also infect the branch. Normally they will exist on the fallen leaves and reinfect the plant either during the season or for the next year. This is the photo I received yesterday, and she's also concerned about her lilac. By looking at the photo, you can see on some leaves, they have an urge burning, like a dried out. That's very typical for anthracnose, which is a fungal pathogen. Some leaves in the lower canopy already starting curling. So that's a sign of how the fungi infected the plants. Another fungal pathogen, which is really similar with anthracnose, is Cercospora leaf spots. The difference between Cercospora and anthracnose is that this disease causes small leaf spot in the beginning, and then those small leaf spots will grow bigger and bigger and develop into major part of a lesion, and then causing the leaf kind of like curling and also starting falling off. Both of the 2 fungal pathogens can cause defoliation issue, and rarely they will infect the twigs or the shoots or the stems. However, the other disease which most of the clients are very concerned about is called lilac bacterial blight. It's caused by bacteria called Pseudomonas. It can not only cause the leaf spot issue, but it can also cause the twig dieback and the stem dieback. So for the treatment for the fungal pathogen and the bacterial pathogen, they share some similarity, which is to have a good sanitation. That means you need to rake the fallen leaves as soon as possible so that it will not become an inoculant to reinfect the plants. At the same time, try to trim all the dead tissue in the right time, not now, but later in the season, like later fall or early spring, trim all the dead tissue so that they will not carry any fungal spore or bacteria that it can become this inoculant for the next year. I know some people are really want to spray something. I would say if you spray any fungicide or pesticide or bactericide, it's not effective now because it's middle of season, the disease pressure really high. The thing you can do is hope for the next year, the weather condition not that favorable for the pathogen. If you have the certain problem, including the lilac blight or fungal pathogen for consecutive year, and the consecutive years and disease pressure really high, you need to do some preventative spraying of the fungicide early in the spring before the new leaves growing out. So again, good sanitation, good fertilization and irrigation will help to build up the plants so that they will become more resistant to all of the 3 diseases. Feel free to send your photos to me about your lilac problems, and we are very happy to help you. That's all I have, Jennifer. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our topics and questions for today. I will now turn it back over to Kelly.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Great topics today. So thank you all for joining us today for our town hall. Be sure to join us next week. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, you can reach out to one of us or an extension office near you. And with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you very much.